Welcome to the Back to Brick Property Podcast. I'm your host, David Lamb. On this podcast, we'll be stripping property investors and business people alike back to brick to find out how their journey can help you on your journey.
This podcast is brought to you by Orange Sales and Lettings. If you know someone that is looking to sell or let a home, please get in touch. Referral fees are available. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Back to Brick Property Show, sponsored by Orange Sales and Lettings. I'm your host, David Lamb. On today's show, we have an absolute property deal machine, OLLIE Whittaker from Emergence Property. Thanks for coming on, pal. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Very well. Glad to be here. First time doing this.
Yeah? Well, I'm sure you'll be a natural, so
we'll see about that.
It'll be fine, mate. It's all about you now. So, so we've sort of operated in similar circles for a lot of years, by the sounds of things. Yeah. I've noticed your business partner Tom over the years, and it was a pleasure to meet you recently. I know a little bit about you, but not a lot, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to going back to brick today and find out exactly how you got here.
Spill the beans.
Exactly, yeah. So, I guess first, right from the beginning, mate, how was life sort of before the property stuff?
Yeah, tough, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, I started in engineering, so my background's in engineering. Always been that way inclined. So I did that for years.
What type of engineering?
So I was marine engineering.
Ah, right, okay.
So I used to work at sea.
Right.
But I worked in a factory for a little while as well when I was young. Started doing a land-based apprenticeship. Anyway, it was dreadfully boring. So left that, went to sea. Honestly, I lasted 2 weeks. They stuck me on a machine and said, "This is your apprenticeship. You're going to be an engineer." 2 weeks in, I was like, I'm going to my training officer, like, I cannot take this. Like, you have to get me out of here. So anyway, I ended up leaving, went to sea, came up the Northeast.
With the job?
With the job, yeah. So I was grew up in Leicester, and then came up here about 17, 18, because my training company, my sponsorship company sent me to South Shields to go and do my qualifications.
Right.
And I spent a few years between going to sea and get my qualifications at South Shields, and I just ended up settling here. Loved it. So, yeah.
What did you love about it, if you don't mind me asking?
I love everything. I think the Northeast is great. I for a while, so I spent about 10 years at sea, and in that time I could have lived wherever I wanted. And I traveled all over the world. I went everywhere. We'd do a 3-month stint at sea, going from Europe to Asia and back again to America, all these places. Brilliant. Stop off everywhere, and I had no real commitments at home. So I could have settled anywhere, but I chose the Northeast. I think it's great. I love the people. I love the place. You've got the coastline, which is spectacular. You've got some great cities. People are awesome. Your cost of living is so much lower. There just seems to be so much more at your fingertips, I suppose, for a lot less. So I loved it. And compared to Leicester, have you been around that way?
I've got family that used to live in Leicestershire, in Ashby de la Zouch.
Ashby, I'd spent you lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's a beautiful little place.
Oh, we had a horrible time. Yeah, we had a horrible
Shows you the standards.
Time. Yeah, we had a horrible time there.
Oh, really?
Something about that just didn't work for us. We left there, and it is a bit of a weird place. It's a rough night out, although it's quite expensive and it looks quite.
Yeah, we used to go down for 1 night or 2 nights at a time, so I probably didn't get a fair reflection of the place. And we always used to go to a nice restaurant and just sit and have a nice food. There was a pub there called The Lamb, which obviously I had an affinity to, so we used to go there. But it always seemed. I know what you mean. It always seemed to have a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, there is. There's nice parts of anywhere.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I really didn't like that part of the country.
Yeah.
And didn't fit in. It just wasn't for me. And we ended up, everything's so expensive, and you're paying $300-400 grand for a house that's up here you could get for 150-200.
Yeah.
You used to go on a night in Loughborough, Leicester, whatever. You'd always get trouble. And then I came up here and never got a bit of trouble. Nothing. You just have a nice time with good people, and I loved it. And I think more people are kind of waking up to the Northeast as well and realizing that it's actually pretty good up here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then I kind of ended up just getting into investing, started researching that quite heavily. Like I get really obsessed with things. So I get really look into the detail of everything, and investing happened to be the next thing that I got really interested in. Property seemed to make a lot of sense to me in the position I was in. I was earning a lot of money.
This is while you're still working away?
While I was still working away, I was a high earner. I went on to super yachts, so I was on these cargo ships, some of the biggest ships in the world, which is it's amazing. As an engineer, like it's just
inspiring as well, I guess.
Yeah. You just can't believe the size of these things. Like, you know, these floating cities. You know, biggest diesel engine in the world I worked on. It was just phenomenally big. It would take up like 5 decks. Just the plant, you know, pushing this big thing through the ocean. So I loved that, but I went onto the super yachts because the money was better. You got a bit more time ashore, and it was just a bit more interesting, I suppose. Yeah. So I did that for a few years, and the money was very good. And when you're doing that job, you don't pay any tax either.
Right. Okay.
So what you earn, you really, you know, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You can keep your overhead super low, which I did. So I was just able to save. But I didn't have any pension. I opted out of all my pensions. I could see that they were a scam right from the outset. And I started getting into property, and I just spent all of my evenings and weekends and off periods just researching, investing and all that kind of stuff. And then, I met Tom and started building a portfolio together.
So you're working away. You've got a bit of money behind you, residual income. You're looking into property. Are you self-taught? Were you reading books? Or did you go on any courses?
Yeah, mostly self-taught, I think. I mean, are we ever really self-taught? You know, it's like there's so much information out there.
I mean, you didn't pay for a 25 grand course, for instance.
I didn't do a 25 grand course. I did a couple of courses, and that's where I hesitate to call them courses because they were more like networking events.
Right. Okay.
And that's ultimately where I met Tom. Is on one of these events, and it cost me a couple of grand, but in the grand scheme of things, it's made me a lot of money. Now, would I say that the content on there was particularly good or life-changing? No. Like, you could get all of that from a book. So I was kind of sitting there going, you know, I've read about all this stuff. You have to get out there and do it. But I can't remember what was the question.
You're working away. You got the residual income.
Yes.
You took an interest in property. How did you then learn?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we learned by doing it ourselves as well. Ultimately. So me and Tom kind of. It was so lucky what we ended up with, because on that weekend I don't even remember speaking to him. I actually don't remember.
You obviously made a good impression then.
Yeah, I don't know. One of us didn't make. Yeah, he didn't make a good impression on me. But it was afterwards in the group chat everyone kind of got involved with. Tom was like, I'm looking for stuff like this. He was down south, couldn't get anything. I was in the north. I saw, I can get you that kind of stuff. Next thing, we'd bought like 3 properties together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was crazy. But he had a background and a skill set that I was seriously lacking in. So he knew the numbers, he knew the investing, he knew the finances, he knew how mortgages worked, he knew how lending worked, which was all the stuff that didn't really make much sense to me, certainly in the early days. And he could bring that and compensate for the stuff that I didn't know. And I could bring the practical stuff, the on-the-ground stuff, you know, the systems, the approach to everything. I could bring that, the refurbs, and you know, not getting ripped off by builders.
Yeah.
And ultimately, then we were able to kind of figure things out quite well together and lean on each other's skill sets, and backgrounds in order to kind of compensate for, you know, a lack of experience. And we bought a few properties together, and that then ended up kind of spiraling into emergence.
Yeah.
And we just went out, did it. We were running it in the early days while we were working. So I was at sea, I was on a yacht in France. I had my ex-girlfriend at the time, like viewing houses. I was processing them all, viewing them all, like checking them all up. I'd spend all my evenings everyone on the boat thought I was absolutely mental, which is a common theme throughout my life.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, we are, but you gotta be a bit mad.
Essentially.
And we kind of figured it out, and you know, we had, but at the same time, we had a bit of money behind us. We were able to deal with the problems that did inevitably arise and always will, no matter how good you are. And we had, you know, a financial backstop, and we were very committed and we really believed in it. And, you know, now we sit here with, you know, a significant portfolio, really looks after us kind of day to day. And, you know, are we sitting here buying Lambos and sipping champagne on super yachts? No, but like, you know, we're doing well for 30-odd-year-olds. I think better than most people. And that's partly because of property.
Brilliant. So I just want to scale it back a little bit. So you've got this time, you've got quite a bit of time to research property, you've got money behind you, etc. when you're working away. But why property? You know, you could have started buying shares, you could have done other things. Yeah,
it's a good question. I think all of these kind of asset classes have their place, and they have their moment in time, and they have advantages, they have disadvantages. And when I kind of weighed it all up, I settled on property for us now, in that moment especially. And the main reason being income. I liked the income generation that came with it, because for me, if I wanted to really take the pressure off monthly, if I wanted to actually be in a position where I could feasibly think about retiring at 40, 50, I needed income. And I needed that income to be fairly consistent, fairly stable, you know, not too up and down, not extremely volatile. One year you're doing 20%, the next year you're doing minus, 3. So I like that stability. I like the history of it. I understood. I think it's an easy asset class to understand. You know, you can see the value in it. Like, everyone's going to need somewhere to live. You know, try finding the value in Facebook. You know, like it's a idea. It's like a thing on a screen that doesn't even make any money. You know, it's like wasn't profitable for God knows how many decades of running, and now it's trading at valuations of like 200 times earnings. It's outrageous. It's absurd. So I could see there was a lot of risk in those kind of assets. Now, you know, you do want a bit of exposure to equity markets and things, but I think that, you know, a solid investment portfolio that's going to last you know, for generations, hopefully. I mean, ideally, I'd like to have something I can pass down to my kids, and I can, you know, and the education that comes along with that is also a key thing to pass down, that will hopefully work for them as well as it did for me. You look at the elite families that go back generations, and I mean, they're all in property. They've all got a good understanding of land and property. So that was a big appeal to me, because I'm thinking, well, if they've run the show for hundreds of years, like, they probably know something the rest of us don't. So that drew me towards it. I liked the fact that you could use debt without it being really, really risky, you know, because if you want to level up your investing, debt is a real way of doing that. However, it can just take you down like in days, you know. But you could do that in quite a secure way. I also thought, so much of investing is like, it's managing risk, and it's like how far markets are going to correct. You know, you're going to have periods of boom, you're going to have periods of bust. That's an inevitable part of like this modern society that we live in. You know, how far can they reasonably allow property to crash before they absolutely have to intervene? Because so what you're kind of doing with property is you're sitting there, you're putting your wealth, you're creating this income, this money, and you're storing your economic output into something that is going to sit and last, and hopefully they can't totally take away from you. And in things like property, it's very difficult for them to do that, I think, because you take away my property portfolio, well, you also take away everyone else's home, all of their equity, and like people's whole sense of security. So much of that is derived from the equity in their house and their ability to sell their house.
Especially in the UK,
In the UK, you know, it's the whole kind of system is based on that. So I was like, if I'm going to bet on a market, if I'm going to put a big bet on any market, I like that one. At least until I've got a portfolio to a certain point. Because also when you start out with a limited amount of resource, which I did. Like, no one's given me money. Everything I've kind of earned myself. You have to put a lot of time and effort into making that actually work. And then from there, once you've got a foundation set, so I like the idea of using property as a way of setting that foundation. I can then use that income to hopefully start leveling up again and start maybe diversifying from that point, which is a kind of where I'm at now and what I've been getting interested in recently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of good in property. There's a lot of challenges as well. But that's why I liked it. It was something that I was fairly confident I'd be able to pass down to my kids, as long as I also pass down the knowledge of how to manage that portfolio. Yeah. It's not going to be such a burden. You know, they're going to know what to do about it. And then I also knew, living in the Northeast, seeing what I could see, coming from the environment of the Midlands, which is very expensive, very overpopulated, quite industrialized. I could see what was coming, what I believe is coming with the Northeast. So I thought I'm positioned in a certain point in time where I can use that to my advantage on a micro level, a regional level. I can build a portfolio before a lot of people have really realized what's going to go on in the Northeast, just like happened in Manchester 20, 30 years ago. Yep. Liverpool as well was another one. So I could see these things, and all these things started kind of coming together in my head. Remember, my family were from Liverpool, so we used to go to Liverpool a lot as a kid. And I remember seeing, like, we'd go into the city. I remember seeing every year or so we'd go into the city, more and more cranes popped up. And this was happening as I was kind of like starting to understand there's a whole world out there, you know? And they were winning like the European Capital of Culture and all these things, and all this EU money was flowing in, all this outside money.
That, yeah.
You know, all this stuff was happening. And then all these property prices started going up. Manchester, same thing. I mean, Manchester, it really worked with Manchester.
It's huge now. It's absolute
God,
boom
it's
city,
massive,
isn't it? Yeah.
You know, and like 20 years ago, there wasn't much going on.
Nobody spoke about it, did they?
No one spoke about it. And then the Saudis bought City.
Yeah.
What's just happened with Newcastle? The Saudis have bought the football club. And I know a few people that know that industry. And I know that when they bought, just like when the Saudis bought City, they weren't just buying the club, they were buying a load of development rights. They were buying a load of land around the city. They were also buying sway with the council and the local authorities. It's called sports washing.
Yeah.
It makes it a million times easier for them to get the local public and population on their side. So it's so much easier to get all these planning permissions that people like us have a really hard time getting. They can get it. And now they're throwing up buildings left, right, and centre in Newcastle. Yeah. The cranes are everywhere. You know, there's fancy coffee shops everywhere. 10 years ago, just weren't there. No. I remember when I first came up here, I was like, we're going to go to Newcastle. Want to get a nice coffee and things like that. I mean, it sounds silly.
Go to McDonald's.
Yeah, and it's like Greg's or McDonald's. And I was like, where is everything? But now it's really coming.
It's all been gentrified, hasn't it?
Yeah. It is. It's slowly being gentrified, and that's great. You know, it's awesome. And the student retention rate is increasing year on year on year as more people realise what there is to offer here. And so I could kind of see that coming. And I thought, right, I want to position myself here, because if we do get this leg up, we do get this, I think, a regional outperformance of the Northeast compared to, over the next 10 years, what might be a macro decline in property. I think the Northeast could actually be the bit that outperforms.
Yeah, I mean, Savills and the likes, they're predicting exactly that, aren't they?
28.5% over the next 5 years.
Exactly, yeah. And then you look at London, I think it's single figures, or it might even be zero.
Yeah.
So yeah, the tide has turned somewhat, and I guess as people live digitally and work remotely, I think it makes the Northeast more and more attractive, because you come up here, like you said, buy a house for 200k instead of 600k, and do the same job, from the laptop.
A lot of people are commuting into London like once a month. Like, you can do that from Newcastle. There's a train 2.5 hours, 3 hours. You know, you can do that, and your living costs are way less. You know, and I think your quality of life is so much higher. Yeah. Northumberland's gorgeous,
beautiful.
Coastline's amazing. You know, you've got great people. You've got plenty to do. You've got a decent airport, like a great airport, Newcastle. Scotland's just up the road. So I could see all this stuff, and I just thought, I've got to make this work. I've got to make this count.
Yeah.
Tom was kind of on the same page, and he knew that the numbers down him didn't work. He'd also done a bit of investing in West Midlands beforehand, and I think he'd, caught probably the tail end of that market, and I think he kind of realised that and knew that this probably doesn't have too many, legs really. I mean, it probably will work over a long enough time.
Yeah, from a capital growth perspective.
From a capital growth perspective, it will probably work. And, and that's the good thing about property is even if you really make a mistake, if you just hold it, same with a lot of things, investing in general, to be honest, if you just hold it, you'll probably be fine.
Exactly.
But there are ways of maximizing that, and there are ways of riding those micro cycles, macro cycles, and they all kind of converge at certain points, and that's ultimately what I've kind of become really quite interested in.
No, it's great, and I always say that to get back to what you were saying, property. I always say this: property is a great place to make money, but it's also a great place to store money.
Yes,
it edges against inflation.
Yeah,
it's a tangible asset, which. The reason I got into property was it was the only asset class that I could physically walk up and touch and feel what I owned.
Yeah, they're like, you take it from me.
Exactly, and physically improve that asset via a refurb or even just some minor works. You're not in control of the inflation of the price of your shares. You can improve a property. Mm-hmm. From an engineering background, I'm the same as you, so I guess it's sort of that tangible sort of aspect of it is important.
Yes.
So that's great, and coming from outside the northeast, you've almost got an advantage, both yourself and Tom, because you've got a different perspective. You've come up and you can identify the way things are going. Yeah. Whereas people like myself, I lived away for a long time, but other people that haven't left the northeast, perhaps they don't see that. They're just bogged in this. Oh, the northeast's rubbish.
It's grim up here. Yeah.
You come up here. You're talking about the coastline. You're talking about Northumberland. You're talking about the uplift in economic landscape. It's brilliant, and you've got that advantage of having that.
It is. It's funny. I mean, I think people used to think I'm mad because I used to say it's pretty great up here, and they're like, no. I'm like, no, actually, it really is. Like, you've got this, that, and the other. I'm like, you should try Leicester. You want to see somewhere grim like that. That's pretty grim. So yeah, there's definitely an advantage in just being able to take that outside perspective and look at the bigger picture and actually consider and compare what's really going on. And it's so easy. I don't know. It's so easy to get bogged down with how crap everything is, and and it's like, kind of is everywhere. Everywhere is not doing.
It's what you make of it, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, we have so many clients that come to us, and we'll do like investor days. We'll get people up here so they can see what's going on, and it's the surprise that they're like, "Oh my god, it's actually really quite nice up here." And we're like, "Yeah, it is." Like, we have good stuff going on, and there's good people, and we have industry, and we have all this, and they've bought into this narrative of like, it's grim up north. It's grim up north. Oh, you never get any growth up north, and it's like, well,
I'm happy for them to think.
Keep thinking that. I mean, keep thinking that, and when you come around, like, give us a shout, and we can help you out, because it's like, it's grim in London, it's grim in Birmingham, it's grim in Manchester, like, it's grim. There's a lot of grimness out there.
I think a lot of that is driven by the weather as well. It's grey and cloudy.
Exactly, it's grey and cloudy everywhere. And to be honest, that was another thing that stood out about the northeast. Is back then, anyway, it seems to have changed now. Is it was way drier. So it was like it was colder, but you'd get the blue skies. There was less rain, and I preferred that massively. So I was way happier because the Pennines would block the onslaught from the Atlantic, and you'd get this like little dry spot. It's not so much like that anymore, but it did actually, when I first moved up here, appear to be even actually less grim. So I loved it, and all these things started kind of happening at the same time. As I say, also understanding investment and how that all works, and how these cycles all converge, and you have these long-term cycles, these short-term cycles, and they all kind of feed into each other. And I just thought, okay, I think the northeast could be a good way of doing this.
It's really interesting to hear that, and really good to hear that as well. So tell me about those first few deals that you bought with Tom. Then you've educated yourself. You've been to a network event. You've met Tom. You're in a WhatsApp group with him. You've obviously got on like a house on fire. Did you set up an SPV together?
Yes. So we set up. We did all that. So I've never bought, other than my own personal house in my personal name. So everything I've done is through a limited company.
That's the advantage of the younger investors.
Yes, it is, and that is a leg up that you've got on. The older generation is now they've got properties sat there in their own name, and they get.
It wasn't a thing. A limited company banning in a limited company wasn't even a thing when I started.
I mean,
You couldn't get mortgages.
What a blind side of that was, you know? You think you're doing something right, and then all of a sudden, no, we're going to change the rules.
Yeah.
And that's another key thing about investing that people don't understand is like, you can be the best guy at building a property portfolio. You can have great assets that are income producing. They're doing really well. You really know what you're doing. And then the government come along and they change one little rule and all of that's out the window, you know, all of that's out the window. But if you think that you're safe from that in any other market, you're totally wrong. Yeah. Totally and utterly wrong, you know, because I mean, look what's going on with the equity markets at the minute. I mean, they're sky high because they're filled with debt, and like now we're having a debt crisis.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just going to vanish. So, yeah, sorry, I keep going off on a tangent. So yeah, me and Tom. It was me and Tom.
Yeah, so you set the SPV up.
Set the SPV up.
What did those first few deals look like?
They were great, actually. Yeah, I mean, that was before everyone else really started.
What year was this?
God, I don't even know. I mean, it will have been 6 odd years ago,
right?
Whatever that is.
18.
Yeah, 18. I think it was 18. So we set
that was a good buying environment then. I did a lot of buying there.
Oh God, it was lovely. And your refurbs didn't cost you what they cost you now.
Material prices were tiny compared to what they are now.
Heaven. I didn't know how good we had it back then. I had no idea.
£6 for a bag of plaster.
Yeah, exactly. We were doing like full refurbs for like 18 grand.
Yeah, easily. Yeah,
Not a chance you're doing that anymore. No. And anyone that tells you they're doing a refurb for 18 grand is lying to you.
Or they're not doing a proper refurb.
Or they're not doing. Yeah, they're doing a rehaul. They've got no idea what they're talking about. So yeah, we bought a couple of houses. First one in Gateshead. We did a couple in Gateshead, and we did Concert as well. Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, and it kind of goes a long way to say about how important it is to have a portfolio and have multiple properties. The one in Gateshead has done really well. You know, we've got the same tenants in there from day one, so we've never had to pay an additional fee for moving costs. Maintenance in there has been steady. You know, I can't complain. Mm-hmm. We had to put a new lintel in a month ago. No, I'm not going to cry about that. And tenants are great. I've always paid their rent. Every now and again, they'll have a bit of a whinge, but totally cool. And that property, we refinanced that at 100K. Bought it for 60, I think. Financed that at 100. We left about 10 grand in that deal, I think, which in today's market is
amazing.
Yeah, very good. I mean, you're not really going to do that, certainly not at scale.
No.
And now that property is probably worth 135.
Brilliant.
You know, so they say you get no growth up north, but like we have.
Gateshead is riding a bit of a wave, has been in the last few years, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a good one. And it's a lovely 3-bed semi-detached house, you know,
brilliant.
Perfect.
Great long-termer.
Yeah, exactly. Really, really good. Concert one, that we refinanced that at 75. That's probably worth about 85, maybe 90. Mm-hmm. We converted that into a 3-bed. So there's been growth, but it's not as good as the Gateshead
Concert's
one.
beautiful, but it's not, it doesn't have that real big employment centre, does it?
I do like Concert, though. Yeah. I do like that area. There's definitely potential.
Oh, it's a great area, yeah.
Yeah, I think, but it's not Gateshead. You know, it's not Gateshead. But the beauty of it is we've got both. You know, so the Concert one generates a slightly higher return in terms of the rent. But we've had a few more transitory tenants on that one. Although, on reflection, I think that was to do with the management we had in the early days. Right. Just not getting maintenance done right, and then the tenants eventually going, well, see ya. Yeah. You know, fair enough. So we haven't had as many problems with that as we've got better as well. And and then we did a few more. I can't even remember where the other ones were, but those two stick out. And yeah, when we then started doing the deal sourcing, we got a few people kind of come to us. Yeah, just Tom was putting out
as your network was building. Yeah, you're building relationship with agents and
exactly. And we got a decent builder on board early days. And I mean, he didn't work out long term. We've got far better guys now, but he was good enough. Mm-hmm. He just took a lot more management from me. Yeah. And we were able to kind of like offer that to other people. We were also, we ran out of money. And it was tied up in we were waiting for refinances and things like that. But we were getting deals come to us that we'd offered on when we were in a position to buy that we couldn't. So it just kind of happened that happened at the same time as someone inquired with us about, oh, can you help me with this?
So just on that, Ollie, did you set out to be sources, or did it just happen organically because of the deals you were getting offered?
Yeah, it happened organically. Yeah, it definitely happened organically. And then we kind of saw that as a way that we could marry the two and use the sourcing to generate the level of profit that we could really scale up our portfolio. And we could use the teams that we would use for our portfolio. We could give them loads of work, keep them so they only work for us.
Perfect.
Build really good relationships with good people in the area, get good staff so we could have good people. We were smashing the viewings out. You know, we had 2 people full time just smashing viewings offers, but like also doing that sensibly as well. You know, and that's a challenge, which we kind of mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So we were able to build this good system that was ultimately building us a portfolio, and we were also using other people, not using, but extending that service to others.
Yeah.
And we took every single bit of profit we made from that business and dumped it into our portfolio.
Brilliant.
And we came away after the 5 years with a sizable portfolio, and we can, you know, let our foot off the gas a little bit, you know, and takes the pressure off a little bit.
So what stage did you formalise and make the sourcing business official? You know, it sounds like you were doing it as a bit of a sideline to fill the needs of your own portfolio.
We got a client in, still speak to him fairly regularly now, nice guy. And we did, it was actually HMO we did for him. Pretty great deal on paper. Like, you know, if we hadn't already committed to buying the ones we were buying, when that came through, oh God, man, that was like an all money out deal, you know. And
that's the only thing with being a sourcer. There's so many times you look back and think, oh, bloody hell.
I'd have bought that. And I mean, he ended up managing that very badly, and it's kind of bit him in the arse. Yeah, he got too greedy with his returns and put some people in there he shouldn't have put in. And he's just had to exit, and it's not done very well. But like, if he'd have just left that would have done really well. It was a small HMO in Gateshead. It's returning them like $1,000 a month, all money out, and even that wasn't good enough.
Bloody hell!
I know. It's just sometimes you just can't help people. But yeah, so we did that deal with him. It went really well. In the meantime, we started getting other people come to us, and it just was this very organic thing. And
so, where were people finding you? You said you've said now a couple of times that people were coming to you. How was that being brought about?
It was. I honestly don't even really know. Like, Tom took care of a lot of that. He dealt with all of the investors.
He was quite busy on social media. Wasn't he?
So a lot was social media, but to be honest, most of it was word of mouth. Like, we ended up, because also what we did, which is different, what we do, which is different to a lot of deal sources that you see out there, is we build portfolios for people. So we take people with certain levels of cash in certain positions, and we'll work with them over a long term to build a portfolio of like what we did, basically, where you can get to like 30 odd houses in a few years. Like, we'll do that. We'll facilitate that for them. So every client we got, there was years in them. They also had good friends that were in similar situations, and it just kind of took over from there, really.
So were you filtering out those people to make sure they were looking to build a big pot? You weren't dealing with people looking for one property, or?
We were always very, very fussy. You have to be, you really have to be.
That's amazing if you can build a long-term pipeline of customers that you know are just going to keep buying and buying from you.
Yeah, exactly. And in reality, it's kind of also certainly the best way to make property work is you commit to it, and you do it over a few years, and you build yourself that portfolio, and you make that kind of foundation. And once that's built and boxed off, you manage that. You never take your eye off it. You manage that. And then at that point, maybe you can start looking at other things. Maybe you're putting into precious metals. Maybe you're, I don't know, whatever you want to do, you start looking down other routes. Or you just keep slowly ticking away at that property portfolio. So we looked for those guys because that's ultimately the people that we can help the most, who are going to benefit from that service the most. because that was us, you know, and that's what we did. So, yeah,
It's also a nicer way to work as well, because you're
Yeah.
building long-term relationships with people. It's, you know, you've got a bit of rapport, you've got a bit of history with them.
Yeah.
It becomes a pleasure to work with, and the ones you're not enjoying work with, I guess you can.
Yeah, and we did do that. You know, we would say to people like, look, this is not working out. And, you know, maybe some people would feel the same way themselves. And that's ultimately fine. You know, property is something that you have to like manage, and you have to be active with it. But honestly, I'm starting to think that that's not just property, that's investing. Like, if you want to be successful if you want to be successful in anything, like, you know, you can't just expect it all to be done for you and then magic money is just going to appear in your bank account every single month, you know? But the problem is we've kind of got that way as a society in like those equity markets, as I say, like people have been so rewarded for just sticking their money in a tracker fund.
Yeah.
And it just every year just goes up and goes up and goes up. But like if you actually understand the mechanics behind that, honestly, you'd shit your pants.
Yeah, there's no basis to it.
There's no basis to it, except for like just governments printing money. Yeah. Like the only thing that is pushing those stock prices up in value is more people buying them, more money flowing into them. Yeah. And when you kind of understand that, you think, oh my God. So those tracker funds that have served people well for a while, I mean, I don't know. I don't really trust that kind of thing. No. I think you have to be active, you have to manage, and you have to keep cool about it.
So back to being choosy on the investors that you're working with. Do you think the ability to be choosy, especially in the early days, came from the security of having your own portfolio behind you?
Yeah, I would say so. That definitely helped.
So you didn't need the income necessarily. Obviously, you wanted the income when you wanted to build a business. Yeah. But you did have a property portfolio providing some income. Exactly.
Yeah, that definitely did help. But there's also a degree to which that's kind of just how me and Tom were, and we could we understood that you kind of can't really help everyone, and sometimes like you're not the right person for that person on the other end of the phone. Sometimes they need someone else. Sometimes they need to go and they need to make a mistake with another sourcer before they come back, and that would happen a lot, and it still happens. They're like, look, sorry, I went and I did this.
I'm back.
Yeah, and I've got this refurb that's like half done. I can't get a hold of anyone. Can you help? Yeah. And we're like, I'm not going to come in and do someone else's work. That's your problem. You got to fix that. But if you want to like actually, have another go at this, like give us a shout. So, you can't be the right person for everyone at every time. You have to kind of meet people where they're at. And so that it's very easy to be kind of pushy sales and push and like, you can do this with no money down and all this stuff that you see, which is just lies. Yeah. It's total nonsense.
But people still pay for it.
Oh my God. Yeah, people do. Yeah. That's a rant.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast on that, I think.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. I mean, it just baffles me. But yeah, so we were always kind of like that. We never went down that pushy route because we didn't want to. We just kind of misleading people at that point. And some people, quite frankly, are just too emotional for investing. And, maybe those people are better off just saving their money, keeping it in the bank and believing that, the banks are going to stay solvent and the government's always going to bail you out and you've got insurance on that. If you want to keep believing that, then maybe that's better for you. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. You are leaving gains on the table. You're not doing it as well as you could do. But if it's gonna just keep you up all night, don't do it. Because there's more important things in life, quite frankly, than worrying about the roof on your property.
Yeah, we've had landlords over the last couple of years that when the interest rates went up, they'd only got into property a year previous. So they bought the first one or two properties, interest rates went up, and they just sold everything. Just panicked and sold everything. We're like, no, property doesn't work like that. Yeah. If you're going to sell it, if you're going to panic like that at the first sort of obstacle you come across, like you just said, it's probably not for you. Probably better off just putting it in a savings account.
Exactly. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's just you. Do the job that you do, earn the money that you earn, save it, spend it. And that's fine. You don't have to fall into these traps of I'm going to invest. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be on a super yacht. It's just this kind of fallacy that doesn't really exist. Yeah. Yeah, so we understood that some people just are there. We were very, very committed to property. We really believed in it. I still do. I do believe that it's a great way to just level up your life, your income, your finances, your security, your relationships, like everything. And it's just a great skill to have. But some people aren't that committed, And
No.
so we would kind of like qualify those leads quite heavily. We would make sure that they're in a position to actually go. We'd check that they've got the funds. We'd see where that comes from. We'd take deposits, things like that. There'd be contracts that they'd have to sign. It would just give a little bit of commitment because you need that. When you go out making offers on properties, there's other people on the other side of that. And you kind of can't let them down. There's estate agents, there's vendors, there's elderly people that are moving into care. And that's the other thing I look at when I see these deal sources and that, like just shucking their way around, the Northeast or wherever they are. I'm like, there's real people involved in this, and there's real people living in your house, your investment. That's someone's home and you have a duty of care to that person and you can't forget that. And sometimes that costs you $5,000, for a new roof.
Yeah.
And if you can't take that, like maybe don't do it. Like really think twice. But if you can kind of accept all that, then property can do really, really, really good things for you.
It's a long-term game.
It's a long-term game, and so many people forget that. And we live in this just short-term world of just instant gratification and morons on social media becoming mega rich, or at least pretending that they're mega rich. Like it's crazy. It's so easy to pretend you've got loads of money.
Yeah. I don't know. I still don't really understand why you would do that, unless you're selling a course.
Selling, well, they're selling shit.
But some people you see that they're flashing the money around and they're rented Lambo in Dubai, but they're not actually selling anything. They're just doing it for a social status, I think. And I just think, God, you've got some real issues. If that's
You have, and I kind of feel sorry for these people to a degree. I know of a few, and I'm like, a lot of them are quite lonely, and it's actually quite sad when you look behind the scenes. They have nothing other than like a lot of anxiety that this whole thing is going to come crashing down on them.
And I understand there's a lot of pressure on us as humans nowadays with social media. It's everybody's living their best life.
Joneses.
Of course it is. It's difficult unless you're mentally on it. It's difficult. It would be quite easy to fall into these traps.
Yeah, it is. It takes a lot of. It does take a bit of mental fortitude to go. No, you're full of shit. Like you're full of shit. Like, years ago, the only people you had to keep up with were your neighbors. And at the end of the day, you could look them in the eye, you could shake their hand, and you could see, oh, yeah, actually, I heard you screaming at your wife last night. So that murk on the drive, like, yeah, you've probably financed that.
Yeah.
But now it's so much harder with social media. But this is just life. Like, it's just challenges. No one says it's going to be easy. No one said it's going to be easy, and anyone telling you it's going to be easy, like, I mean, at best, they're naive. At worst, they're probably trying to tell you something like a course in how to invest in property with no money.
Yeah, and most of them are. Most of them
are trying to sell you a
that,
course. Yeah, because, and this is the other thing as well, like with social media, you realize actually how expensive it can be to put your name out there, and editing videos is like, I can't do it. You got to pay someone to do that. They want money, and that process of putting yourself out there, it's very difficult. So when you see these people on social media doing this, like there's a game to that, but can that person also be honest? And just because they're doing that doesn't mean they're dishonest either. So it's difficult, and you have to use your judgment, and you have to kind of try and like meet people, as I say, where they're at. And not everyone out there is a scumbag and a charlatan, but you have to listen to what they're saying. You have to ask them questions, and you have to like not fall for the Lambo and the fancy subtitles and all this stuff.
Quick search on Company's House normally does the trick.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do that. You can see like, okay, how many properties have you got? How many charges have you got against your name? You can look at their accounts.
Of course you can. Yeah,
it's funny to do sometimes.
Just a Saturday night at home, nothing on the telly. I'll just go through Company's House. Right. So back to Emergence. So how long's Emergence property been going now then?
Yeah, about 6 years, maybe 5.5, 6 years, something like that.
And what are your roles? So I know you've got other people involved as well now, but yourself and Tom, what are your roles as we sit here today?
So I consider myself like the ops director. Like I run really the operations. And have built as well. So it's like we both built our respective sides of the business, and now we kind of run them. So I look after the day-to-day generally I run the refurbs. I keep those teams right. I oversee the sourcing department. It's all my systems, processes, training that have gone into that department that I acquired myself through actually doing it for, a good couple of years. And I'll identify the areas, like we'll check that kind of stuff. I'll, engage with the letting side of things, the building side of things, all that kind of stuff, the nitty gritty really.
Nuts and bolts.
The nuts and bolts, yeah. And Tom, he deals, he's really the point of contact for, a lot of the investment side of things, a lot of the clients, like you'll speak to him or, another guy he works closely with us, who's vetted, trained, and kind of sings from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
So he deals with that. He runs the finances for the business. So he runs, it's particularly apparent when it comes to the management of our portfolio. I will oversee the maintenance and the management, and I'll check the quotes. I'll get the pictures and go, that's not damp. That's condensation, or that's this, that's that. Ask the tenant to do this. I'll take care of that. Tom will look after the remortgages. You've got to remortgage every few years. He'll handle that. He'll run the accounts. He'll make sure that we've got enough flow. The cash flows are all right. And, as I say, we pull each other's skills and we make it work.
Yeah.
So we take that same approach with emergence really as well. So Tom runs our finances and he decides if we get a dividend or not. And he decides, where we find the money for anything that we're going to invest in, any new staff members, things like that. But I'll take care of that. I'll run the office, I'll run the staff, and look after the day-to-day, really, do the training.
So you're out on the coal face. Tom is, behind the scenes. He's the first point of contact, but he's doing the sort of, I want to say admin, but it's more than admin, isn't it? It's a finance.
There's a real skill to it.
Yeah, it costs us, yeah.
Yeah, there is a real skill to it. He'll hate, thinking of it as admin.
Yeah.
But, it's not. It's difficult stuff, and he's at his desk every day. And I'm not. He's grafting away, and he does a phenomenal job. He's a really switched on lad, and it just really works what we have. Yeah.
So it sounds perfect. Your skill sets are obviously very, very different from each other, which is the whole point of a partnership, isn't it? You see so many people doing JVs and starting businesses together, and you're like two peas in a pod. You're just going to clash. And then you have to employ somebody to do the other half of it, which it just doesn't make any sense.
No,
so that's
expensive.
Perfect. It is very expensive, especially nowadays. So who else is in the team now? You've got other people?
Yeah, so we've thinned down a lot recently, just because that portofolio got, it was.
You took a lot on, didn't you?
We took a lot on. It was tough. It was hard. And any business is, anything that you're going to do to that level is going to be very difficult and throw some challenges. And we staff are difficult. Some clients can be difficult. Some properties can be difficult, and you just get to the point. And when you sat there and you've got a sizable portfolio that's paying you very well, you're like,
do I need this?
Do I need this? Do I really need to do this? So we've thinned everything down, we've scaled everything back. We're even pickier about who we take now, and so we've got our lad Leon, who's worked for us now for about 4 years, maybe more, who does all of our viewings. Great lad, a really, really good lad, and he's been so loyal with us, stuck with us. Really knows the systems, really knows the ins and outs. Really, he's now priced and he's now done more deals than I ever did. And he just does great, and he just continues to kind of grow every day. We've got my wife Chloe that still does a bit for us, not like what she was doing, but she doesn't have to either because she knows what she's doing very well now. We have Tom, and Tom's got a guy Ben that's just come into the business as well that works with him. on investor relations, basically. And then we've outsourced a lot. Like, obviously, we have big build teams. We don't directly employ them. You know, I have close relationships with companies.
Yeah.
And they have their own budgets and costs and things to manage. Like, that's not my problem, but they are very good at what they do. Yeah. So they're very, very tied to us. So that's the kind of team, but it's also like you're plugging into a lot of experience there as well, a lot of deals. Like, we've done 350 odd now.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've done a lot, like, and has every single one of them been perfect? No.
And you've come out the other side.
We've come out the other side, yeah, you know, and you kind of sit there and go, oh, right, okay, well, we've really got something here.
Yeah.
But I just don't want it to like kill us in the process, you know?
Yeah, I guess going forward, obviously you've got all this experience now, you've got a great reputation. I have to say this, not just because you sat here, I haven't heard a bad word said against you and Tom, so you're obviously doing something right. You know, you're obviously looking after your customers very well. You've got all the infrastructure in place, you've got all the experience and all the lessons that you've learned over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So I think the difficult thing for you from an outside looking in is going to be resisting the temptation to take on so much again.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is, because you can get so easily just sucked into the hustle grind, and let's go. And at some point you have to sit there and go, no, there are other things that are important to me. You know, there are. You know, like, I'm about to have a baby, like, that's important to me. Tom's got his kids, you know, I want to have a good relationship with my wife. I want to do all that kind of stuff. And like that work and that effort can really, really, really take a lot out of you.
Sometimes you don't realise, do you?
No, and you don't. And you just get so sucked up in the day to day. And sometimes you're just working for the sake of working. And there's so much actually that you're doing day to day that isn't serving you. It isn't working for you, and you got to kind of cut that at some point, I think.
And is that a realisation you've come to since you scaled back? Have you sort of took stock and thought, do you know what, other things are more important, or did it hit you?
It was all kind of all at the same time. Yeah, it was tough. Like, it's really tough. Which they're not going to tell you about on Instagram and in these rooms where you pay $3,000 to be there and learn about it all. It's dead easy, and it's not. It's really challenging, and if you want to do it right, it's really difficult, you know. And there's a lot of risk involved, and any business. But again, like with property investing, like, if you do it well, you will do well out of it. But you have to commit. You can't keep getting distracted by all the other things that are going on, and you know, falling into all these hypes. And yeah, so I suppose you just kind of get a little bit more experience, you get a little bit more wise to it. And I think, anyway, I hope, I mean, I could be falling into some kind of big fallacy right now, and maybe I'm making a big mistake, but it seems right, feels about right, you know.
Yeah. So what are you seeing, what patterns are you seeing with investors as we sit here today? Obviously in a different sort of environment to what we were 6 years ago, with interest rates, etc., a few other things, legislation, stamp duty rises, etc. What are you seeing? Where is the demand still as strong from investors, A, and B, what are they looking for now?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely a different market. You know, it's definitely a different market from even just a couple of years ago. Like, people are sitting on their hands a lot more, which I understand. I think ultimately it's probably not the best use of their time. So people are sitting on their hands a little more. People are a little bit more hesitant to remortgage. Maybe they'll sit on a little bit more cash. But at the same time, there's definitely a drop in property prices, you know, and even if that's 10%, which it seems to us to be about, that's significant in property. Like, it's not often that you get the opportunity to buy a property at 10% discount, you know, so that's a significant drop, which is a significant opportunity as well, if people can just not sit on their hands and actually get up and go. So there's definitely a lot more reserved behavior out there, a lot more fear. As you said, like, those interest rates went up, people just started selling, like, that's a bad move. You know, so you're seeing that on the buying side as well, like, things have definitely slowed down. Yeah, but there's still definitely, like, in the marketplace of the Northeast, like, there's a lot of competition for properties. So there are a lot of people buying still. It's a weird one. It is really strange. In terms of what they want, yeah, I think I do think it's leading the people that buy to make bad decisions because they're going, well, if I'm going to buy in this market, I want 20% returns. And it's like, you're not going to get that. You know, someone may tell you they're going to get you that, but you're not in reality going to get that. So I think it's causing people to make decisions that aren't necessarily the best for them because there's a lot of emotion in the marketplace and in the media right now, and there's a lot of fear. You know, it's recession everywhere, crash, and people are feeling that and thereby then feeding into it. But I do believe that represents a decent opportunity. However, I think that opportunity is more micro than macro. So I think it's going to be important where you buy and how much you pay for that property. So if you're going to go to some other sourcer that's going to pay 10 grand more than I would, that's, you know, you're going to make some errors there, I suppose. So I don't know. It's certainly a different market than it was a couple of years ago. But it's all about how you react to it, and you just have to be careful what you're paying for it. You have to do your numbers right. You know, you also have to understand with inflation the way it is, you could agree to buy a property at one refurb cost, and then literally in 6 months, that refurb cost could have gone up, you know, for a period. If you remember, that was like really problematic. Like,
I mean, even now,
still it is.
We bought a load of timber and MDF products yesterday, and the prices we're paying are just incredible.
Do you want to cry?
Yeah, we get good deals from places, but they've tripled, especially MDF products have like tripled from 5 years ago.
Exactly. And I think, you know, that's a big part of the market that we're seeing now as well. Like, people's savings are depleting. Even wealthy people, like wealthy, you know, comfortable middle-class people that had a bit of savings are feeling the heat and feeling the pressure. So, of course, they're less inclined to invest. However, if you can, like, this is a really good time to do it. Although it feels like the worst time to do it, it's actually the best time.
They are generally the best times, aren't they?
Yeah, genuine. And if you can actually, and it's going to take more commitment, it's going to take more kind of belief in the process to do it now when it seems like everything's crashing and interest rates are going up here, there, and everywhere. Like, so people are just generally feeling the heat. Like, you know, people are going on less holidays. You know, people have got less disposable income because it's not just the price of timber that's gone up. The food bill's going up. And it's like, you know, they try and tell us, the government try and tell us that we've got 3, 4, 5% inflation. It's like, bullshit, have we? That you're lying through your teeth. So people are feeling that, and that's definitely changing the investment market as well. There's just less buyers. There's also less sellers, you know, because people are sitting there and going, you know what, actually, I'm not going to sell right now. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to wait for another 5, 10 years. So, but again, what does that mean? That means the people in the marketplace are a little bit more motivated because it's taking them a little bit more to enter that marketplace. So I think what I'm saying is, yes, the market has changed, but that's what it does, you know. And if you can understand that that's just a part of the process, I'm starting to believe that's where you really make money over a long term.
100%. And when everything's rosy, and when even the media are being positive and the government are being positive, I mean, I've never known a government be so negative than the one we've got right now. Yeah. I'm not trying to bash them, but the rhetoric coming from the government is just, things are going to get worse. Things are going to get worse. Yeah. So everyone's
it's a self-perpetuating cycle.
It is,
so guess what? Everything gets worse.
Yeah.
You know, because people buy in and they go, oh, well, I guess this is, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Let's not do this. And then it seems like everyone's at each other's throats a lot as well. Like, you know, just doing business is harder as well. Like, you know, everyone's costs are going up. You know, people are in bad moods. And it becomes a lot harder to actually make things work. So everyone's feeling that. And, you know, a lot of clients of ours are business owners and things. And, you know, they're feeling the heat a little bit. So they're just taking a bit of a break. But again, as I say, like, if you can do it now, then, you know, by the time this period comes to an end, and it always does, even though it doesn't feel like it will, you'll be in a very, very strong position. And then you will have a period of gains ahead of you that everyone else has completely left on the table because they lost their head.
Exactly.
You know, and it's difficult. But But the business owners is definitely a big one, because those are the guys I think that ultimately we can help the most, because it's so tax efficient to invest business profits into property. That's what we did. They're the guys that we can ultimately help, but they're the guys that are struggling. And make no mistake, I think bigger picture, if you put your tin hat on, I think that's intentional. Like, it's really, they're coming after the people that are the most productive. They generate all the jobs, they generate a lot of the income. They're the people actually gentrifying neighborhoods and really putting a lot of value into society. And everyone has their bit, but these guys do a lot. And they're just being attacked. And they're being attacked in order to extract tax from them, because the government needs the tax to afford this bloated system of theirs of scammy money, basically. Just this inflation. It's just this inevitable inflationary trap. So if you can stay away from that narrative, and you can not get too scared and things, you can do really well.
I do feel like there's a real opportunity, a window of opportunity at the moment.
Yeah.
When rates do eventually come down, I mean, who knows when that's going to be, but
your rent's been pushed in that time.
Exactly.
So.
And rates don't necessarily have to come down a lot. It's sentiment, as you know. If they come down 0.5%, the sentiment within that, and the media will jump on it, and everyone will be a property investor again.
And guess what? Now the price is going up because everyone's bidding for it.
Exactly. There's so much more competition. So, it does feel like a good opportunity right now.
It is, even though it may feel like everything's screaming at you, no, don't do it. And, your income's probably down, and like everyone's income is down because your bills are up. Sentiment is down. It's interesting. This stuff just fascinates me, just on a whole other level. Just seeing how those trends emerge, people's behavior, how that dictates outcomes. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. People are just pouring these little bits in, and it causes these pots to boil over and things. But that's a natural part of any market. Like, you need a cool down period. People get a bit cocky. They over leverage. They take on too much debt. They make bad decisions, basically, and in times like these, a lot of them will go bankrupt. But if you do it smart and you manage it, you try not to get distracted with the narrative and the fundamentals of a market, you can do well. I've started getting quite into trading and things as well. That's been a recent rabbit hole I've been going down, precious metals and things like that, and it's so fascinating to kind of compare all these other investment marketplaces, all these other asset classes, and see how it's exactly the same thing in all of those. The media starts printing certain stories, a narrative shifts, all these fundamental things happen, interest rates go up, and it's like the writing's been on the wall for years. And people start pulling all their money out, and then things start crashing, and it's just society organizes itself on a massive scale. I believe that property will do you really well, and times like now are a really good time to buy. However, you need to make sure that you can kind of afford to do it. If you're sat on a few $100,000, you want to think about retiring in 10, 20 years time. This is a bloody great time to buy. It is a good time to do it if you're doing it with good people. If you know what you're doing to a degree, and if you're doing it in the right places and you're paying the right amount of money for it. And now, are you going to get that right every single time? No, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You just have to be close enough, and you'll be fine. So anyway, I think I went down another tangent there. We've
been on a few, but it's been fascinating, so I don't mind. So I want to ask you, especially now, after what we've just talked about, but just in general, what do you think is the key to finding good or great property deals?
Whoa, yeah, that's good question. I mean, the way I see it, it's such a convoluted picture in my head. I can kind of, I feel confident enough to kind of say I can see it. I think you're looking at decent homes, and now that's not necessarily a house, it could be a flat as well. A lot of people are put off by flats, but I don't think that's I think you're leaving certain, again, gains on the table, certain exposure on the table as well. You're looking at an area that's got decent access to amenities, you know, decent transport links. So again, Northeast is, you've got your airport. Okay, your A1 lets it down.
Yes.
But it is being improved. Okay, Labour have knocked that back. That's what they do. But I think inevitably they're going to have to start doing that kind of thing. You know, decent houses, decent areas, good tenant demand. You know, there's got to be someone that wants to live there. You know, if you're buying somewhere on the arse end of town that doesn't have good transport links, you know, that's going to let you down. You also have to understand the specific areas as well, because in some areas, like not having off-road parking is going to be a big deal. In some areas, that's not too much of a problem. You can kind of get away with it. I think also understanding kind of regional trends, like where is that kind of like a larger area at in its kind of growth cycle? How well positioned is that individual deal to take advantage of that? You know, is it commutable? Like Concert's a great example. It's a little bit out there, but it is at the end of the day half an hour to Newcastle, half an hour to Durham.
Yep.
And those roads are very good roads. So it's absolutely commutable into those regional centres. But as we kind of said earlier, like all that stuff is changing as well. Like you don't need the commuting is less of a thing now as well. So that kind of muddies the water as well. So it's all this kind of like confluence of things that kind of all merge into one thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the best way to do it is kind of commit to a region and buy around that. Buy a couple of different houses here, there, and buying Jarrow, buying Gateshead, and you get a bit of everything there. Yeah. That area you'll buy a bit cheaper, you get a higher return on your rent. That area, you know, you're going to get a little bit less rental income, but you're exposing yourself far better to capital appreciation. And that, I think, is what a good property portfolio ultimately looks like. Yeah, exactly. So you kind of got a bit of everything there within a region that you think is going to do well. Yeah, we look for like good family homes for good families, I think is really what underlies it. You got to sit there and go like, would I live there? You know, and would I in my current situation live there? Maybe not, but like I could. Like it's, you know, it's safe enough. Like, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I hope that doesn't sound like a cop-out, but I find it a very complex picture, and it can kind of be quite hard to articulate.
No, as your knowledge grows, it becomes a lot easier and easier, doesn't it? And like you said, you know, you do have to test the water in certain areas, like you said, buying Jarrow, buying and Gator, whatever. And you build up your knowledge and your experience as you go along, and you build up your network, I suppose, as well. But have most of your deals been through agents, or do you do a lot of direct to vendor stuff?
Probably 80-85% are through agents. Now, they're not all on the market, but there'll be an agent within that somewhere. We've found that that's the best way to make things work. But we do also do the direct vendor stuff as well. But that's a lot of effort and it's a lot of cost. You know, you've got to really put yourself out there. And like, I see guys, and we also did it a little bit in the early days, like leafleting, stickers on vans, boards and banners and things like that. And
do you get much traction from stuff like that?
What you get is a headache.
Yeah.
Like you just get like, there's piles of rubbish outside my house. You know, what are you gonna do about that? And you're like, do you want to sell your house? No. You know, and it's just like, I will still get people 3 years ago calling that number and being like, oh, the tenant left their, you know, whatever, like just silly things. Like, whinge. Yeah, the fence is blown over and you're like, so we found a lot of those are just worthless uses of time and money. So we have a bit more of a targeted strategy for that now, but it's difficult. You know, it's difficult when you're dealing with the public at the end of the day, and you know things change, and there's a hell of a lot of bad press about that circuit, about you know cash buyers. They've got a bad name, and rightly so. So you're dealing with people that are coming to you that are very suspicious of you. They probably don't want to sell to you. They're probably selling because they kind of have to. And their defenses are up, their heckles are up, and they're just waiting for something to go wrong, you know? So it's difficult. So agents work well. At the end of the day, you're leveraging someone else's, I don't want to sound parasitical, but you're leveraging someone else's good name, their marketing, their presence, but at the same time, you need to make sure you look after that person in there, because they are, by coming to you, putting a lot of trust in you. So yeah, agents have always worked really well for us.
So I was going to ask you, for any new sourcer or someone looking to get into property source and listening to this, what would be your main advice for building relationships with agents and also maintaining, more importantly, that relationship going forward?
I think deliver. Like, you can say whatever the hell you want to people. You can buy them all the boxes of chocolates in the world. You can bring them in bottles of wine. You can do whatever you want. You can take them out for dinner if you want. But like, at the end of the day, can you complete? Can you actually buy? And then are you there the next month to buy as well? Are you just going to mess them around? Are you a chancer? And it's difficult because it's kind of chicken and egg in the early days.
Do you think sources are well received now by agents?
No, and I don't think I don't know. I mean, I'm not an agent. It was difficult for us to break through that bad sourcer narrative, which is absolutely well deserved. There's so many bad sources out there. It's chronic. So they're definitely suspicious of them. And they have every right to be. And that's what I mean, is that you have to deliver, because there's so many other sources coming and sitting in front of them that have got loads of clients and they can definitely, I'll buy anything. But like, an agent needs to be shrewd about it as well and understand that there's a process.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if someone's a great sourcer like yourself, you're doing the legwork for the agent, aren't you? They're sat at the desk.
Yeah.
They go, Tom, they go, Ollie, go out and sell that for me.
Yeah. It can be a great thing for agents, and it's definitely worked well for us. I think, but it is really hard to get past that barrier. And I think the second you make, anything goes wrong, it's like, all your sources are the same, and it's like, no, you do have to work with us a little bit. Like, we're not going to get everything right, just like you're not going to get everything right. Yeah. We can deal with any mistakes you make. You've got to deal with anything that go wrong on our end, because so much of this is out of anyone's control. It's out of our control, the agent's control, vendors, solicitors, everyone's. There's so many other things going on. So, but, I think it's a smart move for agents to position themselves with decent sources. It's another stream, it's another way of helping some vendors get a quick sale and making yourself look good, paying your staff, keeping the shop open. Like, it can be there's a real place for it, but so many sources do not help us with that, just by putting, just being not very good, essentially,
We talked about that before off camera, weren't we? But, it's such an unregulated industry. And if someone's got very little capital, but they want to get into property, then sourcing, they're going to give it a go, aren't they? Because...
Yeah, and they believe the stuff of people saying, again, like, no money, no problem. Like, just go and deal source and sell a few deals, and the next thing you're making $5,000. And, like, the reality of making that $5,000, I think this is probably a key thing to say to a lot of those up-and-coming sources. Like, we've seen so many up-and-coming sources, and they are nowhere to be seen now. And I'm not saying that we're better or like we haven't made mistakes and things like that. I'm just saying it's really difficult, and you have to be able to run a business. If you're just going to sit there and think, oh, well, I'm going to make $5,000 on this deal, like, you've probably got to view 20, 30 properties to get that one that's going to make you $5,000. Now do that alongside a full-time job. Now do that while trying to get your bank account set up. I mean, that's a slog every time, isn't it?
Nowadays, yeah.
Even just that, like, try getting a bank account at HSBC. Yeah. How are you going to get paid? And then you got to figure out your invoicing, and then you got to figure out your accounts. And then, a year down the line, the tax man's going to go, all right, give me your accounts. Like, where are they? You've got 3 days. It's like, you have to take all these things into account. You do a bad deal. You're dealing with that for potentially years while trying to get, the next set through the door. Like, you've got 10 refurbs on the go, and it's all very well, right? It's all very well to go around for 6 months and sell a load of deals. Right, now refurb them all. Now let them all. Now complete them all. Like, get them through legals. Just get them through legals, right? And how are your clients buying them? Are they buying them on a bridge? Right now, you've got to get the bridge completed as well. And like, that's one advantage we had. Tom knew about that kind of stuff. He could really help get bridges over the line. Mm-hmm. That stuff ain't easy. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of admin. There's a lot of stuff you need to know. All of it's very scary. You've got to sign your life away.
Personal guarantees everywhere.
PGs everywhere. And that freaks people out. And you got to get independent legal advice. Well, what solicitor do I speak to? Well, they want 500 quid. I don't have 500 quid. And it's like, you never told me that. And it's like, oh, sorry. And then you buy it and you find out, that house that is actually riddled with damp. Right now, that's 15 grand. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the client and tell them that? Mm-hmm. You're going to tell them, oh, sorry. Turns out there's a load of damp in the house. And now that does happen. Yep. That does sometimes happen. Sometimes you just don't see it. But sometimes it's very well hidden. You can't go ripping someone's house to pieces. But on the source's end, you could be doing everything right, and that client can still sit there and go, no, well, I don't care, you should have known. You should have known. I bought this because you told me this is all good. Okay, right. Now you got a real headache. And you've, at the same time, got another 10 deals going through legals, and you're viewing 30 properties to get one deal, and you got inquiries, and you got to put yourself out there, and you got the marketing to do. Like, honestly, like, sometimes... it's not it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think people get into source and thinking they're going to sell a deal.
Yeah. $5,000, yeah.
The buyer's going to sign the paperwork, and that's their job done.
Yeah.
But good sources, like you say,
get over the line.
It's the sale progression, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're acting as a stage, isn't it?
Essentially. Your job's not done when you've sold that deal. Your job is far from done when you've sold that deal. Now you got to refurb it. And I think that's the difference with us is like, we were doing 30 refurbs at a time for 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. That's an operation. Like, that is serious. Like, you get a delay on plastering, delay on materials, you get a load of your refurb team be off ill, which is just something that's happening even more at the minute. That has a knock-on effect. Now, you've got another 20, 30 deals in your pipeline that are all going to complete very soon. Like, you need to be able to deliver on that. And if you want to actually work with people over a long term, you have to keep doing that again and again and again and again. And yes, you're not going to get it all right. You are going to walk into a refurb, you're going to pull it out and you go, what, those floorboards are rotten. Like, we couldn't see it, we couldn't rip a carpet up. Mm-hmm. It's going to cost you X amount more. You then also have to take the time to have that conversation with the client. You have to explain it to them because they don't necessarily know. They've got their heckles up. You got to provide them with pictures, a full report. Like, do you have the time to do that as a deal sourcer, or are you just on the phone, WhatsApp, yeah, bro, rocket ships, let's go to the moon, and you're like, but it's funny, I see the same stuff in the trading circles as well. And you can see the guys that actually really know what they're doing. They've been in the industry for a long time. They have a different understanding of the markets to the guys that are like, let's fucking go, bro, Yeah. And as I say, it's the
probably doing property source on the side as well.
Yeah, they would do. They would do. So it's a hard gig. Yes, on the face of it, the fees look great. They do, but right now you pay staff. Like, you pay staff. There's another deal you got to sell. Mm-hmm. Those staff are going to make mistakes. You're going to have to cover the cost of those mistakes. Maybe, they miss a roof that should have actually been replaced when he did the refurb. He didn't. You might have to swallow that. Do you have the means to do that? And yeah, it's not what they tell you it is. Yep. And you have to be very aware of that. And I think buyers and investors and clients have to understand that as well. Like, you have to understand you could be putting 100 grand, 200 grand of your hard-earned money into something that is being sold by someone that doesn't actually know what they're doing. Yeah.
And it's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's scary. And I feel like a horrible person to say it. I don't want to knock anyone. Like, I'm all for people trying to do their thing. But, like, do your thing. Don't do what other people do and think that you can replicate and duplicate, because that you make a mistake with someone else's money, like, oh.
And your refurb's critical. When you're pricing the refurb, it's so tempting. I understand why they do it, but you see sources quoting refurb numbers and I'm like, there's not a chance on earth you could do that.
No.
Or they'll just emit things that need, because we do a lot of refurbs for people that have bought through sources, and they'll bring them to us, and there's like 15 grand budget, full back to brick refurb. I'm like,
yeah, good luck.
yeah,
All right,
in 1996 maybe.
Do you want to come and do it yourself?
Exactly, yeah. But
Well,
then
I
you
don't
go
know.
to the property, and like you said, and a lot of it's not their own fault. Like you said, you can't rip carpets up and move people's sofas and do that when you're viewing properties. But you get to the property and you're like, wow, this is riddled with damp.
Yeah.
It's got dry rot throughout the joists. It's got this.
And then they sit there and they're like, yeah, property doesn't work. Property's no good.
Yeah.
And they'll tell all their mates that property doesn't work, you know? And they'll tell all their mates, yeah, deal sources, they're all scumbags. And it's like, a lot of them are, you know? A lot of hedge fund managers are, you know? A lot of the people that manage your pensions, your private pensions, are like the worst people you will ever meet in your entire life. And they do not give a shit about you.
No.
You know, a lot of them don't know what they're doing. They're running billion-dollar hedge funds and they have no idea what they're doing, like none. It's the same with sources, you know, and it's even easier. Like your setup costs there are so low. You know, you need a car and a phone.
Yeah, Instagram account.
And an Instagram account, yeah. And you can do good things. I mean, we've had a few just this week where we've seen like we've gone in for a property, we've viewed it, done our refurb, done our numbers, and we'll see people on Instagram or ones we viewed like 3 months ago that we lost out on, we didn't get it. And all of a sudden it pops up in front of us on Instagram from people, deal sources that we see in the area. And God, it kind of cracks me up, but it kind of also just really pisses me off as well. Because I'm like, we could have had that deal and actually made it work.
Yeah. And they're going to sell it to someone who's going to lose money.
They're going to sell it to someone who's going to lose money, and
Unless
they're going to
they
sit
realise
there and
early
go,
enough.
deal sources don't work, property doesn't work, and that's ultimately going to just ruin it for everyone. Their numbers, like this particular property I'm thinking of, we actually didn't offer on it because our offer was so below asking price, which is, again, like something we're really seeing in this market right now, and that's quite a challenge. You know, our offer is so low, it wasn't, it just wasn't going to happen. So we at that point, we'll kind of leave it as feedback with the agent and say, look, if anything changes in 3 months' time, give us a shout and we'll buy it.
Yeah.
That's how we get most of our deals, to be honest.
Yeah.
We let the other people fuck it up, and then we'll kind of try and make it work from there. The source's client paid. He's never seen this property. He paid 10 grand more than we would have paid. So our offer, they paid 70, I think it was for it. We'd have been max 60. Their refurb was lower than ours by like, a good few grand, which makes a big difference on a refurb.
Huge. Make or breaks a deal.
It literally makes or breaks
a
a deal. Yeah, 500 quid will make or break a deal. So a few grand will you'll buy a lot more with a few grand cheaper refurb. Their end value, we had 100 grand, and that's based on like my business partner's mortgage background, but it's also based on like 350 deals in the area. Mm-hmm. So we've got so much data we can go back on and see. And, there's a margin of error all the time. You don't know what mood that surveyor is going to be in, but you can get it close enough. Our end value was 100 grand. Theirs was £125,000. 25 grand. They basically just made that out of thin air. So their deal, we could be putting that same deal out to the same client, it's the same house. Yeah. Ours will say 10%, theirs will say 15, 20% on it. And you're like, well, I'll have that one, please. Mm-hmm. But
you got no chance.
You got no chance, yeah. And the real kicker, we had rent at 700 quid. Top end, you got to do a good refurb for that to get it. They had 900 quid a month. So this is an extra 200 quid a month.
I want to buy properties off these guys.
Yeah, I know, me too. I always message him like, I'll have some. Honestly, we've just seen so much of that for years now, and so many people have come and gone, and maybe they'll make it. Maybe they'll make it work. Maybe he will swallow all that cost. Like, maybe he will. Like,
might do it once.
But he
won't be going back to them.
Exactly. Maybe he will go, your reval came in low. Here's 20 grand. I'll make the difference to you because I said it would do this and it didn't. Mm-hmm. Maybe he will do that, but he probably won't, and like there's so many people like that, and we see them on the viewings, and it's just like, oh God, you almost going into a viewing and you're like, I know I'm not getting this. I know I'm not getting it because your refurb is going to be 5 grand less than mine. Your end val is going to be 10, 20 grand higher. Your offer is going to be higher, and bear in mind that client's also got to pay all the fees. Mm-hmm. So that refurb number that they're putting out there, that doesn't include their fees, and I just sit there and I'm like, oh my God.
I guess that's where your long-term repeat customers come in, because they know how you operate. They know that your deals are actually the numbers that you...
Yes.
There's going to be some sway margin, of course there is, but they know that you're reliable, etc. But when you're trying to attract new customers and they've got the option of you or the other guy who's quoting a 25 grand,
they're going to go there.
Yeah, of course they are. Yes.
They're going to go there, and it's very difficult to kind of get the word out there about what you do when you're competing also for attention from those people, and it's difficult, and you're competing. As I say, I mean, it's exactly the same deal. But one says 25% and the other says 10%, and too many people are going to go and they're going to believe the 25%. But honestly, you're not, 25% is very hard to get. Like, we've done a couple, but like, when they'll make it look like it's all money out and things like that. And like in those 350 deals, like we've done a small handful that are all money out. And there's a lot of luck involved in that as well, and you have to be in front of these people. See it with flips as well. Like, a lot of these guys are trying to sell flips, and we do a few flips, but they're bloody difficult to make work, especially in the Northeast. Yeah, because your cost per square meter for your refurb is just as high as the rest of the country.
Of course it is.
But your cost per square meter for the property on the end,
you need to be buying it insanely low.
Oh God, the margin you need is insane. Yeah, and that's if you're buying with cash.
Exactly.
Now you stick literally 18 grand worth of bridging fees, and so
your 5% stamp duty.
Yeah, and then your 5% duty and all these costs, and it's like, it's so hard to make that work. Like, we'll do a couple a year, and we've done some ones that work really well for us. And if we wanted to, we could put that all over on Instagram and be like, we made 100 grand on this deal, but like, that's after 4 or 5 years of like consistently being out there. You get that one deal,
of course you do,
that comes to you, and you're also in a position to buy it, because in order to buy that property where that particularly comes into my mind, you need a lot of money, cash, sat there, cash ready to go, deployable. You need a team. That's a very large refurb. That was over 100 grand worth of refurb. You need to have the team that can handle that job, because so many builders as well will tell you, I can do that job. They can't, so you've got to have a good team behind you. You've got to be confident on your end val. You've got to get all that stuff right. And then you might get those deals every now and again. Yeah. But on average, you're probably looking at 10, 15% if you're really lucky. And that's if you're not paying someone else to do it for you. Yeah. There's a lot of those people in the marketplace that you could be making a really bad decision with, and you will then be the guy in 3 years' time going, no, property doesn't work. Yeah. But it does. It really does. You just have to do it right.
You just chose the wrong guy,
Yeah.
So what's a day in the life like for Ollie these days?
Not like it was 5 years. Oh, not even 5 years ago, a few years ago. I mean, we've got like good people. Like, as I say, we've got good teams, good staff members. They take a lot less management now, which is great. So I just keep everything going. I'll personally hand over all the jobs. So, a client that buys with us, they're being personally inspected by us. We're checking everything out. If there's any additional overspend, if any problems arise during the refurb, you'll get a full written report from me. It'll probably come through Tom, but it's from me. So I'll spend a lot of time doing that. I'm back and forth with the builders, trying to solve problems without having to go back to the client in order to solve them. Spend a lot of time doing that kind of thing. There's a lot of, sometimes there's coordinating with neighbors on refurbs, things like that. Sometimes you got to get involved in that. Making sure that everyone's doing their job really and they're doing it right. Keeping yourself motivated as well, like keeping yourself informed, keeping tabs on things, checking in with other good people in the area, like yourself and, a few others. I'll do the odd viewing as well. I'll still go out if Leon's got a big job or something he needs to price. I'll go out and do that. Mm-hmm. I'm checking most of his refurbs. We're looking over deals, answering any of the more technical questions that maybe clients approach us with. Tom will say, look, can you put something together for this? Lots of, also at the minute as well, I'm putting more blogs and things together and that kind of stuff. So I'm putting a lot of trying to put some information out there and stuff like that. But also a lot of the time I'm like, you know, I'm getting into these other, there's some other things I'm looking into as well, that, you know, the gold and silver and trading, things like that. I'll put a bit of time into that, often on an evening and a weekend. You know, I have a lot of stuff to do around the house, like I'll, you know, a lot of gardening, things like that. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but like it takes up a lot of my time.
You need a break from it, don't you?
You do need a break. And like, you know, yes, sometimes you can get really caught up. And like, I've found that I work better when I've got, you know, I've got a bit of a project going on in the garden. I've got like a little old banger of a sports car in the garage. I'll fix that up. Just to keep my brain engaged and entertained. And yeah, so there's
a lot of variety there. So how do you manage to keep it structured? How do you manage to stay disciplined?
I think I've kind of come to the realization with myself that that's the way I work, and it kind of always has been. For a while, I tried to like chain myself to the desk and be like, right, you're going to work here
just
until
for work's
here.
sake.
Yeah, you're going to be available. You're going to be this, and like it was just a box I didn't fit in. So I feel like I work better when there is a bit more variety. It keeps me engaged, it keeps me entertained, and it just keeps my brain like ticking over. Otherwise you can get a bit...
You can be a busy fool, can't you?
You can be a very busy fool, yeah. So I spend I spend a lot of time working on the business. That's certainly what we're trying to do now.
Strong position to be, and you can do that because of the quality of the people around you. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But it's you know, that comes with its own set of challenges. That's a total mindset shift.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's not easy. You know, you've got to kind of give up a little bit of control and things like that, and
which is very difficult. I know myself, when you've started a business from day one like you have, very, very difficult because it's your baby, isn't it? And
it is.
You've got to I've come to the sort of realization that if someone does it 85% as well as I would, that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, you're totally
you know what I mean?
right.
But it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it took me years to get there. But now I'm like, all right, do it. It's not going to go maybe as well.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be good enough for the client.
Yes. And, you know, you're the backstop there. You can kind of make up for that
if you
15% difference if you need to.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a process, and you work with these people over the long term, and, you know, you work together on things. As you said earlier, like it's a team approach, and it really, really is. Again, that's another thing I see with a lot of these deal sources. They're on their own. You know, oh my God, I couldn't imagine doing everything that I had to do to get Emergence off the ground and speak to the clients and raise the finance and, you know, sort the accounts. Like honestly, I think that's an impossible task. I just think it's an impossible task. Yeah. And the people that we found that did that, none of them made it work. None of them. But again, you have to be the kind of person that is trustworthy, because someone out, like Tom has to trust me just as much as I have to trust Tom.
Yes, you do, yeah.
You know, he has to be as committed as I have to be. You know, I have to respect him as much as he respects me. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you do it. And you know, and then you find other good people like yourself that are, you know, switched on, smart. They're running the business as well as they can. They're sensible. They understand there's a bigger picture. They're not running around thinking they're going to sell for 15 mil in a few years' time. And, you know, I see so much of that in business as well. People just it's like get rich quick mentality.
Yeah.
And it's just not true. And it's not true in property investing. It's not true in equity markets. It's not true in business. It's not true in
anything in life,
Bitcoin.
is it? No. Anything worth having, anything worth doing.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's bloody boring.
Yeah.
It's long-winded.
And I think that's also a bit of part of the business stuff as well. Is like a lot of it is a bit boring, and you do have to do the day-to-day slog, and you are going to have to deal with problematic tenants and clients and issues that you're like, oh my God, you've messed it up again. Like, what is this? And it'd be so easy to just go, are you, I've told you this a million times, you know? Yeah. It's so easy to do that, but you can't, you really can't. And yeah, it's not as easy as people make out. And I look back and I think I couldn't have done it with Tom.
No.
But I can also sit there and acknowledge that, like, I don't think Tom could have done it with me, you know, without me. So it's like you both get each other there, and you surround yourself by good people, and you do that by being honest, decent, trying your best. And even if you mess up and you approach people in the way of like, yeah, okay, like, then 9 times out of 10 they're okay with that.
Yeah, I think they respect that. If you're transparent, you say, look, I messed up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to deal with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, like some people can't get it out of your head that it's your fault. And sometimes it genuinely actually isn't your fault. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that the other person in the equation isn't going to understand that. Yeah. And doesn't mean that they're not going to keep going and keep attacking and keep... And yeah, you could give them the money and shut them up and you could refurbish. It's difficult. And I think a lot of sources that get into this don't understand that. And I think a lot of clients that go and buy properties from people don't understand that either. Like you have to... It's your investment, no one else's. It's your money. It is your duty to make sure, as best as possible, that it's going to work. With property as well, you also have to remember you have a duty of care to the person that's living in your investment. I think another thing that people forget is that there's this label of property investor. Yes, you're investing in property, but you're also a landlord, and that title has become it's just toxic now.
It is, yeah. I see it all the time. And besides the rent, that tenant owes you nothing.
No, yeah, exactly.
But so many landlords are so righteous and that, it's as if you're giving the tenant a gift. They're paying you good rent, they're paying your mortgage.
Yeah.
Apart from the rent, they owe you nothing.
If you want to keep putting your rent up, the other party needs to kind of consent to that, to a degree. You
don't just tell them.
Yeah, and you can't just smash it up all of a sudden because, oh my God, interest rates are going to go up. I'm going to smash it up. You have to kind of factor that into your numbers and you have to understand that that's just a part of this cyclical market that we live in. Mm-hmm. It's a part of this system of currency that we use to kind of run our society. So I don't know. I think I've gone tangenty again, haven't I?
It's all right because it leads into one of my last questions, which is, what does the future hold for Emergence? Where do you see it in the next 5 years?
I just want to keep doing what we're doing and doing a good job. I think being honest with people, I want to. One thing I've said to myself recently is I just want to work with good people. There's so many arseholes out there. So many.
Why are you looking at me when you say that? Thanks, mate.
Well, I mean, the fact I'm here, yes, I just can't. They're just all they're going to do is just make your life hard. So I think we just and Tom's on the same page. He's got a good life. He's happy. I just want to be happy. I want to learn to be a bit more content with what I've got. Mm-hmm. And Emergence is just a part of that as well. We want to keep just doing what we do. I don't think we'll go to that level again. Just work with a group of people that kind of understand how this stuff works. We'll do everything we possibly can to help them, and just want to keep digging out at that. Mm-hmm. It's difficult because what's the future for Emergence? It's also so much what's the future for me? Yeah. What's the future for us? Because Emergence is just it's just as you say, it's like your baby. It's a part of you. So I think we want to do that. We just want to work with good people, and and do the best job that we possibly can. Yeah. And
so it sounds like there's no specific end goal. You're just enjoying the journey type of thing.
Yeah, enjoying the journey and seeing what comes of that along the way. As I say, I'm kind of diversing my own personal investments as well. So I've got quite interested in that. I do a bit of that. I'm in a transitory place where I've got a baby coming and things like that. So I'm about to become a dad, and that
life's about to change.
Exactly. And it brings a different mindset shift. And I just want Emergence along for the ride with it, and just looking after us. I used to sit there and think, oh, we'll sell it and we'll do this and we're going to build it into this behemoth and we're going to make millions and all this kind of stuff. But
why?
Yeah,
it needs to be why, doesn't it?
I don't know if I can be asked.
Not just for the sake of it.
Yeah, because it's you can do that. Mm-hmm. But what's the cost?
Yeah. And it's just a piece of your business is just a piece of the jigsaw, isn't it? It's a piece of your life. It can become your life if you're not careful. But
yes,
I like your attitude because it sounds like you see it as just a piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah, it's another part of the process, and you have to care for it just as much as you would anything else. If you give it that care and attention, and you're honest and you're decent, you surround yourself with good people. And I think that's the future of Emergence. I hope is that we have some really good people around us that we can feed into and whatnot. I think that Sounds a bit wishy-washy. Maybe it's not what people want to hear, but that's kind of just honestly the way I see it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Last question. I won't keep you much longer. One piece of advice to a brand new property investor sat here today, what would it be?
It's kind of so much of what I've said is like, understand that this is a market. There are cycles involved. It's an investment. It's on you. There will be work. You are not going to be sat on a beach in the Bahamas, just having, as I say, magic money drop into your account that some wonderfully, sensible and well-behaved tenant is just going to drop in there for you and go, thank you very much, sir, for your foresight to invest in property.
I'm still waiting for that day. No,
yeah, I know. Yeah. Maybe one day. Wouldn't that be great? Like, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that. You are going to get problems. You are going to get leaks. You are going to get emergency call outs. You are going to get interest rate changes. The market's going to turn against you. 1 year, your property is worth 130 grand. The next year, it's worth 100 grand even. That can happen. And it can happen in any market. So if you're willing to approach it as an investor and you can keep yourself cool, keep yourself calm, don't freak out every single time you get a maintenance bill, just question, just think, just cool yourself down and deal with it from there. And if you can take that approach, you can do really well. And don't rush into it as well and feel like I'm going to miss out. Like, you do have to enter the market. You do, but you don't have to do it tomorrow. You don't have to sit there and go, oh my God, I need to invest. I see a lot of that online.
Yeah.
It seems to affect mostly people with like 30 grand, 40 grand. Mm-hmm. To those guys who want to get into property, I would say, like, keep saving. Keep saving.
While you're educating yourself.
While educating yourself. Work at your career. That's ultimately going to reward you. And then if you can, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, you've got that liquidity, you've got a bit more confidence, you know a bit more about the world. Maybe you're now ready to enter the marketplace. And ultimately the best time is then to make into the marketplace. Don't overstretch yourself. Don't do it too soon. Invest what you can afford to lose, but also understand that if you don't commit, if you're sitting on 400 grand and you're not willing to put like 250 grand of that into property, it's probably not going to be worthwhile. But if you're sitting on 400 grand and you want to put 250 on that, because you can afford to lose that 250 when you got 400, you'll do well. You'll do well. And if you can just focus on the long term, don't get too emotional. That's how they ultimately take your assets from you. That's what gets you to sell. Who buys in these kind of times? The banks.
100%.
The banks. And don't let the banks buy your house. I think, otherwise the gig's up,
It's not a bad piece of advice to finish on that, mate, I don't think. But Ollie, it's been absolutely fascinating, mate. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
If no problem at all, if people want to know a bit more about you, a bit more about Emergence, what's the best place to find you?
I don't have. I'm going to work on it, a bit of an online presence.
I think you're doing all right without it.
Yeah, we have done. But Tom Mills, a great guy to follow. He does most of our social media. Have a look at Emergence Property. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, we've got a website. Get in touch if you kind of like the way that we think. We could be right for you. And for me, I've got Facebook. I've got a LinkedIn. I've just updated that this week. So, if anyone wants to reach out, have a chat with me there, then, I'm happy to do that, or go through Tom. We can be reached. Facebook, LinkedIn, Emergence Property, all that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, pal.
Oh, amazing.
If you did enjoy the show, please do like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, take care.